Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Hello. I'm running everything tonight. My name is Kimmy. This is Season 24, Episode 15 of the Happy Jack's RPG Podcast and Advice Show. And I have friends with me today. Who do I have with me today?
Hi, I'm Tappy, and I don't know why I put an end on that. This is not a game.
Hi, I'm Mary.
Hi, I'm Kurt.
Yes. And tonight, in this episode, we are talking about Andy from Germany sends in an email and he wants some opinions. That's good. We have a lot of those. Christopher has some things he'd like to say on RPGs with IPs. And Bill in Ann Arbor asks about personal gold standards in RPGs. And if you would like to email us and get our opinions, which we have many of, please email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. You can find us on social media. We have a forum first off. That's happyjacksforum.com or happyjacks.org/forum. And there's lots of stuff happening. It's very bumping there and very mobile friendly now. Go check it out. We also have Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I'm not doing the other one. All of those are Happy Jacks RPG, all one word. Happy Jacks RPG, all one word on all the social medias.
I have no idea which one you skipped.
Even MeWe.
Yeah, no. Stu says that, and he posts there once every 3 months. It's not a thing. Do not waste your energy.
No, it's Mayway.
Yeah, Mayway.
Posts on,
Go to the
not
forum
Mayway.
instead. People post there.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to watch the show live, you can check us out at happyjacks.org/live. We've got links there to both both Twitch and YouTube, which both stream the show live. And I think that's everything, right? We don't have any.
I have no idea. I don't even pay attention when Stu does it.
I know. Stu looks at me, so I'm looking at you because you're where I usually
I know,
sit.
it's awesome.
And I have all the
So
answers
excited.
usually.
I'll totally
You're
give
saying
you
that
answers.
you don't now?
I'm doing more things right now in this show.
No, you can I will totally tell you my opinion on
Okay,
things.
yeah, you will. You totally
Yeah,
will.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that's everything right now. Stu will be back next week. His kid's in a show tonight, so he's being a good dad and filming his kid's performance. All right, so why don't we start with the first email? And Kurt, you have some at least basic knowledge of German.
Yeah.
So you were going to take this email.
What's your definition of basic?
Better than mine.
He can order at least 3 different alcoholic beverages in German.
There we go. That's so much more.
Beer?
Das ist gut.
Okay.
All right, so Happy Jack's Barometer from Andy in Germany. Grüße, liebste Frau Buchsen. That would be greetings, dearest Happy Jacks.
See?
With Jacks translated as the place to put headphones into.
Oh my.
Andy from Germany here once more.
I'm just going to say that translation could be a much worse
Oh,
option.
yes.
Like, there are many worse options that it could be.
He could have found a German translation for douchebag.
So it's like a. What do you call like the sticky out bit on the headphones that plugs into the jack? What is that called?
The
Plug.
yeah.
So we are plug receptacles.
The
is
male
what it
plug
says.
receptacle.
Yes, essentially,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Sticky outy thing. I like that.
Yeah. It's a technical term.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know it. Yeah. Only us real big tech guys know
Yeah,
that.
we're professional.
Yeah.
I'm not.
All right, continue. Sorry.
Andy from Germany here once more. Since I actually managed to get my email read last time, I figured to give it another shot. This time I have a series of 5 questions I'd like to hear your position on, partially for a setting I'm working on, but mostly out of curiosity and for fun. Without further ado. Question numero 1. What do you prefer? A soft magic system where most questions as to its mechanics are answered with, "It's magic," or a hard magic system where it follows distinct and consistent rules? Do we want to take these one at a time,
Why
or
don't
do
we
we
read
want to
them
go
all,
through?
and then we'll go back and kind of
We'll go back to
revisit them.
okay. Pregunta numero 2. What do you prefer when it comes to modern day settings? A setting where everything still kind of works as normal, with some elements added on top, e.g. Shadowrun, Dresden Files, or a modern but post-apocalyptic setting? Frage Nummer 3. Which do you prefer, a progression system based on internal power, levels and the like, or an item equipment-based progression system? I don't know Asian languages. I can't even read this one, so I'm assuming it says question 4. It actually does have the numeral 4, so I can read that much. Which do you prefer? A setting which draws heavily from familiar elements like existing fiction, orcs, elves, etc., or the real world, or a setting where most things are more or less original? Question number 5. What do you think is the point a character should come together? Right away at the beginning of a campaign, or in the middle to / later parts, usually level 5 for D&D and such. You can answer both for the gameplay mechanics and a character's personal story. P.S. A fun fact about Germany, or Europe in general, we have a bunch of bejeweled skeletons of supposed saints in churches here, and they look garish as heck. This is true. I've seen several of them.
Yes.
Awesome. And yeah, that's.
But he didn't sign it, so how is it a postscript?
This is very, very true. It is after the rest of the script. So.
It's his email. He can do what he wants.
That's true.
Thank you, Andy in Germany. So let's go back and take these one by one.
Hey.
So the first one, soft or hard?
I have an opinion
Magic.
on this.
Magic system. Magic system. You have an opinion?
I
do. Can't imagine, Tabby.
And my opinion is the two things you described are not mutually exclusive.
Same.
Oh.
Same opinion, actually.
Is, why something happens. I can tell you why a thing happens without having, Fireball be one of, your spells. I can tell you exactly how magic works in my version of World of Darkness, even though it's very fast and loose.
Yeah.
And so it's it sounds more like the question is, do you like effects that the caster, the person playing the caster, can choose, as opposed to having discrete spells that you can then cast?
Yeah,
that's what it sounds more like.
Well, I think it might also have to do with like the rules, because the spells in D&D, for example, if you cast a magic missile, there are very specific rules to how a magic missile functions.
Right.
So versus a PBTA system, which is, I know, our favorite soft example all the time. You're okay, you do something. There's rules to it, but it's not like a magic missile where it can be. I guess it depends on the example.
Yeah, that's because in original Apocalypse World, the brainer has very specific this. You can do in-brain puppet strings.
Yeah,
and this is how it works, and you can do these things, but it's very kind of discrete and specific, as opposed to some other ones based on Apocalypse World, where it's more haha.
Yeah, these are the effects of it, and you get to kind of narrate the how or why it works necessarily. Yeah,
or even with masks abilities.
Yeah,
there's a sorcery ability.
Yeah,
and it just lets you do magic, so you can do magical things when you're unleashing your powers or whatnot.
But still somehow magically still balanced.
Well, yeah, because you're still just using the same moves.
Yeah, exactly.
Just you have different opportunities in which you use them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna before he started asking the questions, he asked specifically about setting, not about mechanics, because he's building the setting for his game. So therefore, I think I'm actually approaching this question a different way, because I'm thinking about it in terms of magic in the world being ooh, it's magic, and most people don't understand it, versus it's magic, let me give you my PhD dissertation on how this works.
Okay.
So I feel like he's asking a slightly different question there. And the reason I don't think they're mutually exclusive is because at that point, if you have a system like that, you're going to have people who are overeducated and pretentious, who are let me explain to you how this is harder than physics but completely logical with my magic. And you're going to have other people who are look, I pulled a rabbit out of my pants. And and they're not going to necessarily explain all of it because they've learned a couple of tricks that maybe they follow a set mini ritual to make happen, and it happens.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is one question where you're really dealing with on a level of what type of characters do you have in play. Because if you have a street mage, and I'm going to kind of hit Shadowrun on this because that's something I'm actively playing right now.
Nice.
If you have a street mage, then they're kind of like, yeah, I watched this guy and I learned this thing, but I've got to have a yellow shoelace for it to work. And then you're going to have somebody else who like is the full hermetic tradition working for a corporation who it pretty much is science with the way they test and refine things. Both of them work. Both of them actually use the same set of mechanics and results in the game, but it's very much a flavor thing based on the character and the personality and who's doing something. So I really feel like you can have both of those in the world depending on what characters you have and what NPCs you need to introduce. And that can actually be a really fun source of tension in a party where you accidentally have an entire party of magic users who all have different schools of magic.
Yeah. I think.
Oh, like Mage Ascension.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I like
That's
that.
exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
But Mage is
Yeah.
one of Mary's favorites. So we've been trying to get a Mage game going for quite some time. But the first time I read it, because I'm very familiar with Vampire, as everyone knows, but that has very discrete rules for magic. Whereas the first time I read Mage, I was like, so what can I do? And Mary says, anything. But
Yeah.
how do I do anything? You say that you do it, and you do
And
it.
you hope the dice
and
are
those
right.
are in the same basic setting. Those are both in the World of Darkness. So I mean, there's different approaches, and how a chorister approaches it differs very much from how a hermetic
Yeah.
approaches it.
Before we just for 1 second, I want to tap on something that Mary said a second ago that I think also includes like both of what you were saying. Because one thing you said in your statement was, you've got the street mage and then you've got like the corporation mage, and like, but the mechanic, like no matter what the flavor is, the mechanics beneath both work the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point. Like you can have things flavored, but I think no matter how you have it flavored or set up in your setting or system, like there has to be some consistency to how magic operates in a universe.
Yeah.
And like moving away from game examples and into more like movie examples, like Harry Potter, like there's very like movie and book, sorry. Like, there's very specific examples of how magic works in that world. Like there's potions, there's actual casting of spells that requires like specific things be done with a wand and saying things.
To be fair, they don't actually say why
Right.
the specific things with the wands and the moving things actually works.
Right. There's no explanation, but the mechanics are this: you have to do those things. So it gives a shared understanding. So a wizard who has their hands bound is at a disadvantage. So it just gives those same basic rules of I'd like rules of gravity, but rules of magic-y. I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, no, goes right into what I was wanted to say,
Yeah.
and that is through the lens of world building. When I run a game, like I was saying with like World of Darkness, I always want them to know why magic works, even if the players don't, or even the characters don't know all of it. And sometimes that brings me a little bit away from like the setting itself, which I'm okay with because I love changing things. So like, why does alchemy work? Why does in Exalted, I'm going, okay, why does alchemy work? Why do all of these, I mean, it's a flat plane with these elemental poles. There's no planet. There's no like actual, like the sun is a literal god. So it's like, okay, there are no such things as molecules. They're only just tiny, tiny, minuscule gods that aren't really self-aware that do the things molecules do.
Yeah.
And then you can bind them together in different, or they're basically like atoms.
Yeah.
And then bind them together into different molecules to do molecule-like things.
Yeah.
And that allows me to know why alchemy works. And because I know why alchemy works, then when a player comes up with something that they want to do, it's like, oh yeah, sure, you want to make fire come out of that thing? Sure, there's a whole fuck ton of fire and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So you just got to break it apart and
Yeah. So
do your
even if the
thing.
players don't know, you as the world creator, and then because you can then adjudicate like what would work and what doesn't, that makes perfect sense.
And it has to, I believe that you have to make a fair adjudication.
Yeah, the
When you
rules
do
of
it.
how the dice.
But not even just the rules, like with the world, it has
Yeah.
to be fair. And in order for it to be fair, it's best for you to know what it is, or if you make a decision, do your best to remember it and build things on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you have
Like
a world,
consistency.
if you have a world where you've only had mind magic, you don't want to suddenly pop up with a fireball just because the player thinks it'll be fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Although sometimes you do, because then they've just created a new school of magic and you have an entirely different plot. But it's an informed decision.
If you're open to
I
that.
never change my plot for characters.
Right. And actually, Tuppy, you did a great one. And I mean, you didn't mean necessarily for it to be public, but we were playing our Masks game on Wednesday. And your character, I'm not going to give spoilers, but did this really cool thing. And you rolled really well. But it was like one of these things where it was like, okay, well, it works. And we're going to have to figure out why it works. And you came up with a really great reason,
Yeah.
like, why it works, which you should like go post it in the forum or something.
Yeah,
so that
I'll
we
do
don't-
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's cool the way you used because you're the newborn. So it's not magic necessarily, but it's like your tech
Yeah.
power to do something, which was kind of like magic.
Yeah,
but
it
worked
looked
really-
like magic.
Yeah.
And so when I got home, I was like, it can't be magic. I'm
not
not okay
magic.
with that.
No.
It's sufficiently advanced
Well,
technology.
No, but I can't do the hand wavy. It's technology, right?
Right.
Like for me, how I like it, I want to make sense of how
Sure.
it works with like my character, so that it all fits within that like realm of the character.
Sure.
Right. I don't want to suddenly like tack on. Oh yeah, and I'm an astronaut.
Right. Well, so I have a question for you with regards to that specific thing. Would you entertain the situation either as a GM or as a player where you were suddenly able to do something that you can't explain, and especially as a player, or if you were the GM, one player was suddenly able to do something that they couldn't explain, and then that gives them the opportunity to figure out why that worked, how that they were able to do that.
But that's a different situation.
Oh, okay.
Like
All right.
if Kimmy said, "Oh, your character does this," or you're playing, and then suddenly like this thing completely changes, and like you're doing this awesome thing that you didn't even know you could do. That's different
Okay.
than me saying, "Oh, I'm doing this totally awesome thing that I didn't even know I could do. It's not even on my character sheet."
Okay, yes. All right. Fair enough.
Because
Okay.
then me knowing how the universe works can
Right.
adjudicate whether it's something that actually would work in the physics of that world.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's a little bit of a thing there. Let's
So-
move on to question.
I think we've just agreed we want consistent mechanics that
Yeah.
can be mysterious as long as they feel fair.
And as long as the person creating the world understands it, so there can be consistency.
Yeah.
Yes.
The world must have consistency
Yes.
first and foremost.
And this is what a GM should be doing. It should be adjudicating fairness across, to a certain extent.
Educating fairness.
I need a gavel. That's fun.
I like how Traveler calls it the referee. Therefore,
There you go. Yes.
And the ref is blind, as we all know. Sorry. Let's go on.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there you go. What do you prefer when it comes to modern day settings? Do we like a setting where everything still works kind of as normal with some elements added in, like Shadowrun and Dresden Files, or a modern but post-apocalyptic setting? G-Tappy, I don't know. What do you
Well,
prefer?
I like both of them. I mean, I love post-apocalyptic shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
That's your
100%
life.
my jam. Yeah,
That's just
yeah,
your
yeah. I did a LARP of that for like 4 years.
Forever.
Not even stopping.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, I don't see how those are necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Just because, like, in post-apocalypse, I mean, it is still technically like, I guess what he's trying to say is like the world works as like the.
I think just asking
like
our preference.
civilization.
Yeah, like not that they're mutually exclusive. It's like, which flavor ice cream do you like right now?
I mean, that's.
I mean,
you asked me to choose favorite
this-
child here. 'Cause, like,
both of these are speculative fiction.
Yeah.
And right, and it's just a matter of is it past, present, or future?
Yeah.
I disagree because
Okay.
Yeah.
the type of dystopia and like what the actual threat is fundamentally different.
Well, this didn't actually bring up dystopia.
Well, but that's what we're talking about with at
Post-apocalyptic
least,
tends to be, though.
and so is Shadowrun.
These days,
I mean,
yeah.
Cyberpunk is
Yeah.
definitely dystopia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so you have like an unfriendly world that that is actively trying to kill you,
Yeah.
but not specifically.
Right.
Or you have a world where they're not specifically trying to kill you,
Yeah.
but actively doing it.
Right. But I
right?
mean,
like there are people behind it. Like a corporation has all of the power. And post-apocalyptic, nobody really has all of the power because you're all fucked.
Right.
And so it's really like the world and the situation that has all of the power. Like, if you've seen Cabin in the Woods,
Yeah.
have you seen Cabin in the Woods? Okay, so that scared the fuck out of me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was somebody intentionally doing it to you.
Yeah.
That is very different than most horror. Most
Yeah.
horror, people accidentally get into a house where there's ghosts, or
Yeah.
like
But this is
happen to be at a
directed.
camp. But this is choosing people and directing it to them. That to me is more of like what Shadowrun is.
But he also brings up the Dresden Files specifically.
Yeah, I'm looking at his examples, and I'm thinking the question is more. I don't think post-apocalyptic is quite the right description in the comparison here. I'm kind of going on the idea that English is not his first language, so that's why I'm kind of like there might be some wiggle room here.
Maybe it's really well written.
It is really
There's
well
a lot of correct punctuation.
Yeah,
so-
Yes.
the Germans learn English very well.
Yes, better than most.
Most
Well, he
Americans.
says
Americans.
he's,
So
he's
I-
in Germany or German.
It just says
But
might be
in
I
Germany.
I
I
think the
mean-
comparison is modern setting with that element of fantasy or sci-fi, but most of the world works the way we are used to the world working, versus a world where you're going to have a lot of things are super wildly different, and you can't make basic assumptions.
But Shadowrun is an example of like the normal.
Shadowrun has a lot of pieces where it pretty much works like normal. I mean, it's
Not
Stuffer Shack.
society specifically.
It's Stuffer Shack instead of Starbucks. But I mean, in terms of what, maybe this is also my perspective based on the Shadowrun game I am currently playing in. But in a lot of ways, it feels a lot like current society where you kind of fucked up a little bit. Except also there's magic and orcs, but society as a whole and human behavior and expectations are roughly the same.
I usually think of it
I
as
would disagree with that.
yeah. I usually
Okay.
think of it more as post-apocalyptic with like mega corporations like thrown in there.
Well, how I see it is, mega corporations are like the big thing in control, right? And so
Yeah.
the world is being controlled by these people, and you as a Shadowrunner are sinless. Like everybody has a system identification number. You are outside of that.
Yeah.
And so your world is really that of a hobo. Your murder hobo gets paid very well for what you do because you are a deniable asset between these other corporations.
Yeah.
And that is a very different world than I live in.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
like,
okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
We've had to go on too many shopping runs for me to feel like it's a completely different world.
I mean, yeah.
You can go shopping. Oh, you have probably fake sins then.
Yes, now we do. but there's a lot of interacting with society and blending in normal in the game I'm currently playing. So yeah,
Oh, see, that's totally different than how I play Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Because I like giant mohawks and like fucking.
we also time traveled and are trying to hunt down. It's a long story. I'm going to stay focused, but it's a long story.
To be
I
fair,
always drop in and play the bad guys in one shots. That's like how I play Shadowrun. Like except for the Rainbow
Oh, yeah.
Railroad last year. That's the
Yeah.
only time I've actually played like a good character
That,
in Shadowrun.
that game is why I'm in Shadowrun now, because I had so
Yeah.
much fun with it. I asked this other guy, he was
Nice.
like, I want to run a one shot. And I said, how about Shadowrun? And
Yeah.
it turned into a campaign.
Yeah, that's how it does.
And oh my God,
I personally love. I mean, I like playing post-apocalyptic. If I'm running, I definitely like more normal, just because there's, at least for me, just there's more shit. I like more subtle stuff to mess with my players with, and that's a little bit harder to kind of plan out for in a post-apocalyptic because it tends to be more. Well, let's just blow up the building.
Right.
So it can be other things, but
Yeah, I mean, having run various games in either modern settings where everything is as you expect it to be, or in historical settings like the game I ran during World War One.
Yeah.
I do like setting games in established, not fiction IPs, but more like historical IP, not IPs, more like historical settings.
Yeah.
Because for one, I can.
you were
I
Disney
can-
for mentioning World War One.
Right, exactly. For one, the research is easier,
true.
and for two, if my players do research in this, then I have expectations I can fuck with,
that's true.
and
There's-
that's always fun.
There's one thing I've learned is you cannot rely on your players to do research.
No, you cannot.
Or read the rules,
Yeah.
Or read the rules between games.
or bring their character sheets or dice.
Or
Right.
I love my friends.
But you can. They will usually breathe in and out.
They will bring and they will drink your beer.
Yeah.
I won't.
Drink your alcohol.
Yeah.
No.
Usually not. I'm usually driving, so.
Oh, okay. That's
Unless you have whiskey that is 25 years old or older.
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
Anyway,
Let's go to the next thing.
Go next thing.
Frage number 3.
And we will just do one thing.
A progression system based on internal power levels or the like, or an item equipment based progression system. So, examples. I mean, D&D obviously is a level based system. Most
But also
D&D is also an item equipment.
also okay. Bad example. World of Darkness is an incremental internal power.
World of Darkness is not on that list as an option.
I understand that. I'm trying to
It's
establish
okay.
if I
You
understand.
don't have to
This
do
one's
that.
not
We can
a-
just talk
yeah,
about it.
This one's not a multiple choice. We can
Yeah.
do
Well,
it.
okay, but I'm trying to understand it in terms of
Yeah.
the question.
No, I think
and-
World of Darkness is a good example because I don't think you
it
can
an
have like unless a GM decides to make up some powerful
There
item.
are very few.
Yeah, like, it's not something
unless
you're
you're
gonna-
a mage, and then you can make your own.
yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
but
but
as
that's
opposed to Traveler, which is almost entirely based on equipment.
yes, that's a good example of that because
Not entirely, but almost.
yeah, it's hard. At the first going from 0 to 1 takes I think 8 weeks of studying something.
And then a die roll, yeah.
Going to 1 to 2, 0 to 1 takes 16
weeks.
weeks.
8
I think.
weeks.
Is it 8 weeks?
Yeah,
I
0
thought
to
8
1
weeks was from nothing to 0. And then I think from 0 to 1 is 16 weeks. Like it doubles. So you can you do improve, but you do it very slowly.
And your basic stats really don't. Your basic
you
6
can't
stats.
change your stats.
I just glazed over there, guys. What were we talking about?
Okay, you did not get to glaze over while we're talking mechanics.
Really,
We were
seriously.
talking mechanics. They were talking weeks.
Anyway, point being,
Weeks of downtime.
yeah.
point being,
In-game
equipment
downtime.
versus internal ability.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So,
See, that's
yeah,
again like
I like the feeling that my character has progressed in a logical way related to the plot. So I hate leveling, but I like internal power.
yeah.
Yeah.
If the way I progress in relation to the plot is the result of getting items and equipment, that's cool. But like D&D level progression, it's like, hey, cool, I am suddenly able to sneak up on people, although I haven't made a stealth roll in 5 levels.
Right.
I think that's true. Like there can be like the leveling system, like we think in D&D, can be a little clunky. Where more point-by systems or systems where, like World of Darkness, when you improve, you get to kind of put it where you want and where it makes sense
Yeah.
for your character.
Yeah.
Or one
Which
roll
there-
engine. Same
Yeah,
thing.
and the One Roll Engine does that too. Now there is customization in D&D's leveling. Like you get to choose. There's the options you can choose and things like that. But I think it feels much more sudden. It's more like when you play a video game and bloop, 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 and
Yeah.
suddenly that's the wrong noise, I know, but whatever.
that'd be awesome if it was though. I want to play that game.
And really-
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah, just like that.
In the middle of combat.
Oh man, can somebody like
in
get
real
that?
life, like you're like
Ding.
walking through the parking lot and you like, oh hey, I did my taxes, bloop bloop bloop.
Please somebody
Oh my
get
God,
that
it's-
soundbite
it's
and just
the-
like
the end.
No,
Good.
Stu's not here. It'll never happen.
Yeah.
But it can feel a little bit more, a little less elegant.
Yeah.
Where in other systems, and even in Traveler's a good example. Like it makes more sense with the story because like I spend my weeks studying, Amerikish or whatever I want to get better in. While D&D, it's suddenly like, and you are more powerful by like
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And in game, only 3 hours have passed, but you fought a lot of things.
Yeah.
One of the things about Traveler, though, specifically as an example of items make you better. In a lot of cases, it isn't just items. Like, there are like, oh, I got, a better pistol or something that makes you more powerful. But, like, if you get, like, a bigger ship somehow, you also need a crew. You need, like, where did you get that? There's a lot of social stuff, a lot of,
Yeah.
like, working that Imperial system.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of
Like-
it's tied in with your skills too. So like if you want a power suit, you have to have VAC 2 to use it.
And like, if you want to get that from this Duke, you have to. Somebody has to figure out how to get in good with the Duke,
Right.
And so you have to do all of these things involved with it. And so it still feels to me like the character is doing it. Like it isn't like something is bestowed upon you, which is kind of like how it feels in this one. Like it feels like they're saying more like looting things. Like you walk along, you kill somebody, and you loot at stuff, and now you're more powerful. as opposed to more of like entrenching yourself within the world and having that, because that's how people do stuff.
Yeah.
Like as people, like that's how people get more powerful in corporations or like do some more of like the pillar of the community or what have you. I think it's very important for that social aspect, that internalized power translate to externalized power when you're working with this sort of situation.
Yeah.
The item you get doesn't make you more powerful. It's the reward you got for being able to access it, sort of.
Well,
No?
I feel like we want the same thing. Like I don't think we're saying one is better than the other necessarily, but I think we're saying that both the character becoming more powerful and both getting more items have to make sense with the story and have to be something that makes sense with the progression.
Sure.
So where sometimes like we keep using D&D as the example of the things that don't do that.
It's
where
the
you
easiest leveling one to remember.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And the one that most people are familiar with. But
Yeah.
like there's the leveling where you're suddenly much more powerful, and then there's the we killed the thing and now we get the more powerful thing, where there's not really the effort of building the skills or the resources to get either the more power as your character or more items as your character. Good. I summarized.
Go me.
Excellent. I mean, that's what I found in my Traveler game,
Yeah.
is not necessarily they were getting, I mean, their skills were going up, but I mean, Bill deciding that they're just going to destroy like an entire country basically and take it over, and then they do.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there makes you way more powerful, this successful campaign to overthrow a government.
Yeah.
And so is that item-based leveling?
That's where
you could
that's-
describe it as such.
That's where you're like, my equipment is this country, and it raises my social stat.
But technically it does.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, my country will destroy you and your puny house.
Yeah.
You have a social status of 3. Not anymore. Here, I'm a duke.
I feel like that's like a whole other category in and of itself.
Right.
Awesome. Next one.
So which do you prefer? A setting which draws heavily from familiar elements like existing fiction, orcs, elves, etc., or the real world, or a setting where most things are more or less original?
Oh, so we have 3 choices for this one.
Well, it seems to like lump existing fiction IP and real world into one category and then
So
make up everything on the spot.
So not make up everything on the spot. I think it's more like the GM made up the
Yeah.
background world more. And I'll be honest, like I have played enough
Custom world build.
goddamn D&D that if I never play D&D again in my life, I'm fine as long as I keep playing other systems. You know, it's like I don't need any more Pathfinder. I don't need any more anything that is set in that basic Eberron setting. I have done it a lot. Now that said, if somebody asks me if I want to play and I like the people, I'm going to play anyway. But I would also be perfectly happy to never play it again. So
No offense, Kevin.
yeah.
So basically, like, do you like things that are like well known, or do you like campaigns that are all original?
Yeah.
If I play something well known, I gotta fuck it up. Like, I really like being able to use my own original like creativity. So it's like if I'm playing in some sort of D&D world, there's definitely going to be something different that makes either the world feel different for me, or like I've changed like how something works, or something like just playing straight up D&D, or like other IPs. Like if you talk about Middle Earth, like boy, Tolkien wrote really good books.
Yeah.
I really like reading them.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell that story anymore. Like I don't need to play in Middle Earth. I
Right.
would like to do something where I have come up with it. That's more
Right.
fun for me.
I'd like the idea that I have some influence on the world as much as the world, maybe not as much as the world has influence on me, but I can change things.
Well, as the GM.
No, as a player.
No, but that's what I'm talking about. As a GM.
Yeah, he's asking for
like
settings.
I like
Yeah.
playing things that are different.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
very specifically, like there's a world that I've been working on, which is, it's everybody's an elf, and then somebody killed the sun because it's a god, and so there has been night now for 6 months. Everything's snowy, everything's frozen. Like there are monsters out in the dark that you need to hunt and kill, but these are the monsters that have hunted and killed everything else.
Can I play?
It's very cool.
I've been working on this for a while, so I don't know when it'll be done. But that's the kind of thing that interests me. Is what are these monsters even look like? I don't know, but they're gonna be they're totally gonna be fucked up.
I want a world where I get to explore and discover as a player as well as a character.
Yeah.
And if so, I don't mind if the inspiration is from the real world. If you picked a patch of history I'm not used to, or it's like drawing your inspiration from various South American mythologies instead of, oh look, it's another Greek god. Like, so I like stuff that I just haven't done over and over.
Yeah.
And if it's something that the storyteller created totally on their own and it's a new setting, that's great. If it's something where the storyteller was really inspired by a mythos I haven't played in, that's great too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was in years ago. I was in a game that was set in Babylon 5, right? Specifically, it was set in season 3 of Babylon 5.
Episode 5.
No, there were points where we were able to identify which episode we were in, but the aspects that we as players were dealing with were there. That was the stories that weren't being told on the show. And so there were things that we were coming up against that
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Babylon 5. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I like both, honestly.
Yeah.
I've never played in a Tolkien game. I don't think I would enjoy that because I think that would be something.
You'd be so angry all the time. That's not how it works.
See, a friend of mine is currently running a game set in the first age.
Yeah. They'd have to really know their stuff.
Oh, he does. He knows.
That's good.
He knows his
I
stuff.
still like. I don't know for that. Like, I don't know. It's a lore that I love, like reading about and but like everything's kind of been done for it. I think kind of like I agree with Tappy. As much as I love it, like that's not a story I need to tell because I know that story really, really well.
Right.
And I don't even know if I could play that game and do something unique because I know all of it so well.
Sure, but if somebody were to, if you were to be invited to play in a game that was set in, I don't know, the Farscape universe.
Yeah, I have no idea about any of it, so
Right,
cool.
so it's an existing IP, but you're not as familiar with it.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
but-
So to me, it seems original because I don't know about it. So to me, it would be the same as someone coming and making a whole original universe because I know just as much about the Farscape universe as I do about whatever the hell they made
Sure,
up.
right.
So it's kind of got that same thing. I tend to, when I'm running games, I like creating things from scratch. I actually designed a game to create a world from scratch because I like doing that so much. GoldenLassoGames.com/Decima. But I don't know, and I think again here we have the argument of like what is original. Because I think like there are some really original ideas out there, but they all are kind of on the basis of the same similar elements. So it's like, are there any new ideas? It's like the same question that everybody in all art forms asks.
There are.
I mean, there's only
Six
so many
plots.
different progressions you can have in music, so I'm
Exactly.
pretty sure
There's what,
most
six?
of them have been
Eventually,
done so far.
we all write Stairway to Heaven again
Yeah.
at some point by accident. Like, son of a
Same.
bitch.
Son of a-
Yeah.
What, 6 conflicts, 37 plots?
Right,
Something like that?
something like that. So but I like the creativity that comes with creating something original,
Sure.
and I like the feeling as a player when it's something original because I feel like I can kind of contribute to it.
Right. One of the things that I feel about kind of regular settings is either it's like a book or a movie or something. There's already a contrived like thing that makes life untenable, that you have to do something, or everything's kind of in stasis. And I like creating worlds where, like, by its very nature, the players are compelled to do something, or else things they do not want to happen.
Right.
And so, I mean, you can obviously, and I think if you keep that in mind, if you are doing a regular thing, that okay, here's this regular world, how can I make it so that the players want to do stuff?
Yeah.
And throw that wrench in there, and then I think it's more fun.
Yeah.
Because now something new has happened that you have to deal with. And then you can discover what it is, figure out how to do whatever, but you also aren't given a quest. Right?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of my take on it.
So I think the agreement is we like things that we're not familiar with, but it can come from an IP we don't know, or it can be something created by the GM.
Or just, I feel like, I mean, I love playing in Star Wars games, but I don't like playing, and we've talked about this ad nauseum. So thank you for listening to me say it again. But I don't like playing in like the Skywalker part of it.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
like I'd rather be a smuggler on Batu that like nobody's ever heard of and nobody will ever hear of.
Right.
Yeah.
And things like that. So new stories, I think,
Yeah.
as long as I'm not being plugged into, the Lord of the Rings and here's the ring. Take it to
Right.
Mount Doom. And I'm like, I
Catapult.
Yeah.
Done.
hey, Eagles.
Well, and also through the lens of a GM, which I think again we have
Yeah.
to remember here. Like, it doesn't. You would be familiar with it,
Yeah.
if not. But like, yeah, at least for me, like a new thing or putting a big new twist on whatever thing it is more interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. Be creative.
Number 5. What do you think is the point a character should come together? Right away at the beginning of a campaign or in the middle or later parts?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
So I LARP a lot. That's honestly why I've probably put more time in LARPing recently, just because of what's been available to me. And I have characters where I walk out into the game and I can put on this character skin from the first step I take. And I have other characters where 5 games later, I'm still struggling to find the character's motivation. And that is entirely just like, it's from my internal player. My stat sheets are almost always solid because I'm good at that. Occasionally my stat sheets are chaotic disasters, but that's usually deliberate, reflecting the character's personality. So for me as a player, if I can't lock into what matters to my character within 2 to 3 sessions, it's going to make for non-cohesive gameplay because I'm going to start just spitballing what's my motivation, or just be like, I'm going to do this fucking chaotic thing and maybe it'll give me something that becomes my character motivation because it entertains me as a player. But this isn't something that I feel like a storyteller can control because it has to be that piece of the character background clicks with my psyche. I have character sheets that 2 years later are still a hot mess because I'm literally buying things in reaction to what I'm doing in game. And I'm like, that guy over there just dropped 20 dice to do something. I rolled 3 for the same action. But that reflects my character. So mechanically, unless I just don't have enough points to build the character in my head, and then it comes together in a couple sessions. But for me, with like clicking with the character and the ability to play it, I really want that within a couple sessions. And I can't control that, unfortunately. Because at some point, it either clicks or it doesn't, and I have to make a new character.
I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. But with the idea of like a character coming together, what you said kind of sparked an idea in me of like, in my character. I just actually hit something. In our mask game, you should see masks every single Wednesday on happyjacks.org.com.
HappyJacks.org. Oh my God, you're fired. 10 years. It's been the same
.com is a tobacco company.
for 10 years.
Like, this character is very different than a lot of the characters that I play because it's not like super edgy or destroyed or have a super tragic backstory, but there's very specifically room for growth, and that's what the character is about, growth. So like who this character is going to become as an individual is a big part of what I'm playing right now, as opposed to typically I know who the character is as an individual and they are being pushed against an untenable situation. Right? Kind of like what I described before. Like I like problem solving. It's totally my jam, especially when it comes to role playing games. And so like I usually have my character problem solves this way and this is how their brain works, and okay, now I'm gonna go into this world, into this situation with these people and interact with them, usually poorly. Like
Those socials for the win.
and problem solving. And so that I think might be what they're talking about, of like a character that comes together very early, as opposed to the character that I have now, where the game itself, part of the game, and that I'm really excited about because I've never done this. Part of the game is finding out who the character is,
Yeah.
as opposed to I'm going to fix everything and do all the problems.
Yeah.
So I think that might be
That's
that idea right there.
not quite what I was going for, but I like your thought process.
Yeah.
But that's not quite what I was trying to express. But
Well, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
That was different. I know that was different, but it,
Okay.
it
Yeah. He was
reminded
saying
me
his
of that.
thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Personally, I overthink the crap out of my characters as I'm designing them.
What?
I know, right?
That's my surprise face.
it's only my absolute favorite part of gaming actually is creating characters.
Yeah.
So I overthink the crap out of them so that when it comes into first session, I know exactly who that character is when we go into first session. At that point, all bets are off because interacting with the world changes you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And one of the things I love about role playing is seeing how those interactions change my preconceptions about this character that I agonized over for however many hours. And how he, because I only play male characters, but he reacts and is influenced by the decisions that he makes and by the situations that he gets thrown into. And so, yes, the character comes together in the beginning and then keeps coming together more
Yes.
throughout the rest of the game.
And that's one of the arguments for like not leveling at all, because what really is important, like if your character is really put together and you have like a story that isn't necessarily like of a very long duration, and how your character changes, how your personality changes is what is important. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's correct. That's just one of the arguments that I've heard for it. It's like it's about how the environment changes you, as opposed to how much better you get at knitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has changed a ton for me, and I don't think there is a right point for a character to come together. There's been characters, and I used to be like the person who came and wrote like the giant backstory, and then me. But more and more, I come to the table and I actually try not to have like an idea. Like if I needed to have like a class or a playbook or something in mind, I do. But I like kind of figuring out while I sit there, like what kind of works. And my character from Jason's Demigods game, Raven, is like a really good example of this because it took me a while to figure her out. Like me, like even though I like was making her up, and she ended up a very different character than I kind of was like. Because I was like sitting there, I'm like, oh, I'll play the trickster. That sounds interesting. That sounds very different than something I've played. So in our session 0, I like kind of made her up as we went, and she ended up being like really emotional for me, and like something that actually changed the way I approach role playing, like experiencing that.
Those are the best.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I actually play a lot of characters that I don't think I would have been brave enough to play because I kind of went through that. So I don't think there's a right time. Like, I was literally like halfway through that campaign before I started really feeling like I knew who Raven was. But there's also characters I've played where I feel like second session, I'm like, oh, I've got this locked in. I know exactly who this person is. So I don't know if one is better than the other.
Raven was so immensely different from your character in Moat.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just night and day, completely, different planets different.
Yeah.
And how you played them was completely different. And then the one in Jib's
game. Like Adrian was just me, like a control freak Ventru. Like that's myself.
But then, but then your musician character in Jib's Cortex game was also just another
part of that also like was someone. It's like, oh, she's a folk musician.
Yeah.
like I made that character and I was like, that one is actually hard because I got like 3 sessions into that and I was like, oh, I made a character that's too close to me.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Adrian was your professional you.
Yeah.
And the musician was your personal you.
Yeah, and it got hard because I started like worrying about her and like it was just very. It's there's like a safety distance
Yeah.
from playing
Yeah.
like something
Bleed
that's too
is
close to
a
yourself.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, bleed is a
And
thing.
suddenly, like you're like,
Bleed is a
oh,
thing.
there's orphans, and oh
Yeah.
shit, yeah. So
Whoa, this got real.
yeah. So I don't think there can be a right point. I think it changes for every person. And as a GM, I think you can kind of help people along in like your session zeros and stuff by like having like character connections or backstory questions or like on your first session. I tried something new when I started Masks this week where I had them because they're all teenagers. So I'm like, okay, it's morning and you're getting ready for school. What does your alarm sound like? What do you do in the morning? Like just these basic, like, how do you start your day questions?
Right.
And I read that on, I don't know where I read, like something that suggested that. So that kind of like got us rolling, and it might have been boring, I don't know, but
Well, I mean, it's may have been from the Apocalypse World book because
might
that
have
is
been.
very specifically what Apocalypse World says your first section should be is let's do an everyday
yeah, I think
day.
it might have been actually.
And, you know, what is your house like? Let's see where you guys hang out. And it really, like, kind of sets the world up and lets the players also, like, kind of still determine, like, where they hang out or where they go
Yeah.
to.
And think
I
about
thought it was
those
great.
things.
I had a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, well, I don't know. Is my character the type to get up early and put on a bunch of makeup, or to roll out of bed and put it on the bus on the way to school? Like those little things that,
Or
even,
not at all.
Yeah, or not at all. Yeah, it's just me every day. Yeah, so I don't know. So I think this is definitely of the 5 questions, this is the one that like there is no answer to.
Yeah, it's this is all personal preference, and he did specify it was like
Totally.
I'm just looking for your opinions on this. So
My opinion is you can't have an opinion on this because it's different for every campaign.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Every
and-
character.
and,
Sorry, I know that's a
for
cop-out
different every,
answer, but
different every campaign, every
Yeah,
situation,
every
player.
system,
Yeah.
for everything.
I will put one qualifier down though, since he mentions gameplay mechanics. By the second or third session, I want to understand the basic gameplay mechanics.
Yes, but I think he means like
Yeah.
coming together, like the character is effective and capable of doing stuff.
You know, some of my best characters were ineffective for over half the game.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters ever was completely ineffective because he was on drugs the entire time.
First character I ever played in any game ever was I had designed a character that was like, well, I had to do a little bit here, a little bit here, and it's like, oh, this is a system. You know what? Screw it. We're going to do it this way. Yeah, he was ineffective compared to the other player characters at certain things, but it was like I'm worse at this than he is, and I'm worse at this than he is, and I'm worse at this than he is.
Yeah.
But I can do all of those things, just not quite as well.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack of all trades can't do anything.
Yeah, but in Traveler, they're like.
Oh,
it's like
when you get Jack of all
the
trades
goal-
3?
Yeah, that's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
That's
man.
the best.
Or
I'll
literally
try it.
anything. Just have a 0 in so much stuff. You're like, I can do everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's-
I'm not a
I don't
negative
have a
3 to
negative
everything.
3.
All right, so we have been talking for a long time, and we haven't gotten to the other 2 emails. So we're going to go through these other 2 emails. They are valuable, and we love them, but we're going to go through them and be pithy and on topic. I believe in us. Yes. All right. I'm going to read this one from our friend Christopher Gray. Hi, Chris. All right, and he is writing in about more on RPGs with IPs, which we kind of touched on already in this discussion. So, hello, genuinely lovely people. Hey, Chris. See, I think we should stop with the douchebag thing. You folks aren't douchebags. You are insightful, funny, and interesting commentators on a hobby for which you exhibit a lot of sincere passion.
And we're pretty.
But the douchebag comment comes from a very funny story in, like, season 1.
Yeah.
A long time ago. So anyway, I heard repeatedly that you need some emails. So here's an email. I was taken with your discussion about managing games with known IPs by recommending you play adjacent to known areas of the story. I have some real game examples of this in action. In my game, The Great American Novel Role-Playing Game by Christopher Gray. That was a very subtle plug there. Good
Very
job, Chris.
subtle. Yeah.
Available on christophergray.org. I don't know. I made
Yeah,
that up.
Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun using known trappings for con sessions. It helped to expedite the game by setting up themes everyone already knows and presenting an implicit tone and structure. So I chose known trappings like The Godfather, The Shining, Tombstone, and many others. While each was handled a little differently, they all remained story adjacent. For The Godfather, we played our version of the Corleones. Did I say that right?
Corleones.
Corleones. There we go. I haven't
Probably.
seen The Godfather. Don't tell me.
Yes, Corleones.
But we.
It's just between us.
Thanks. He doesn't listen to the show. Wait.
Yeah, I was actually in that game that he's talking
he's
about.
in the chat room.
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Hey, Sam. All right. Anyway, sorry, we call you Mr. Kimmy. With each was handled a little differently. Oh yeah, the Corleones, but we used our own characters. They were in New York during the 1940s and were involved in a massive mafia war that all started at not a wedding, an Easter celebration.
Yep.
Ooh, how historical.
Yeah. For The Shining, we went closely adjacent. The players were playing writers going to a writing retreat in the Overlook Hotel in 1987. So canonically, the Grady murder happened at the and also the Torrance incident. They had to go through the same debrief that Jack Torrance went through all those years ago, except this time he was part of the story too. And the characters even got to meet Ghost Jack later in the session, allowing me to whip out my best Jack Nicholson impression. Very nice. For Tombstone, we played in Tombstone, but populated it with the characters that we made, not the historical ones, or the dramatized ones from the movie. However, we hit all of the tropes, and instead of the OK Corral, there was another climactic shootout with serious consequences at a ranch homestead. In the Big Bad Con recently, I ran what was basically a Star Wars game using the system where the known Star Wars universe was replaced with our own shorthand version, but all the same themes. It went very Rogue One on us and culminated in a huge firefight between rebels escaping a mansion where arms trading was done and Imperials trying to crush them. We even made up the name of our empire, planet, and rebels. But make no mistakes, we were playing Star Wars. In general, keeping themes adjacent, even if you choose to or not to use canonical characters, is enough to capture the feeling and the tone of the IP. The themes and tropes are more important than the proper nouns, and with the right care, can emulate any movie or book you are trying to go for. That's it for now. P.S. You don't have to drink if you don't want to, but if you do, now is a good time as any. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chris.
So, what I would do with that is mobs, like mob bosses and mobs in 1850 in a town way up in the mountains of Colorado, and it snows early and you're all stuck there.
Can I play?
So all of the above.
So,
No, but Mary's just
And everything's
going through
haunted.
her
yes.
I am only in 4 right now.
So, fun bit of trivia before we move on to the next email. The Shining is my husband's favorite movie.
game. Really? I couldn't have told
Yeah.
from the particular
Yeah.
photo that went out recently.
Have you guys
Yeah.
ever stayed at the Iwani?
No. But he tried to show it to me one time. I am terrible with horror movies. I get scared and I start yelling at the screen. We got halfway through the movie and he's like, all right, we're done. We are done with this. We're not doing this anymore. Because I was just screaming at the people because I get so frustrated and tense.
Yeah.
It's very bad. So I've not seen the whole Shining.
So quick
It
funny
was taken
story.
away.
I saw The Shining when I was 21,
Yeah.
but when I was a kid, my grandpa would go to Yosemite a lot, and he had stolen a key from there in the
Oh.
70s,
Uh-huh.
so you could go and get free tea. And my grandpa, being from the Great Depression, when
Yeah.
it was free, we did it all the time.
Yeah.
So I spent my childhood going to the Iwani all the time.
Oh.
I had no idea that the sets were based on the Iwani.
Mm-hmm.
So they go into it, and suddenly it's this hotel that I've known intimately since I was 3 years old. And all this bad shit is happening. And I'm going, oh my God! Flip the fuck out.
That's awesome. That is so
It was
good.
so
Oh
scary.
my god.
Because you see a horror movie that was shot in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. All right. Last email from Bill in Ann Arbor. You want to read this one, Tappy?
Sure. But
Or
lets
Mary.
me
Either one.
it lets me do the joke of if I had a restaurant in Ann Arbor, it would be the Ann Arboretum. Okay, never mind.
Eat them.
Eat him, damn
Near
near
killed
killed him.
him.
There you go.
Dear Happy Jacks, relatively new listener,
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Einstein says hello. But I've been binging a lot of RPG podcasts since Gen Con this year. writing on the subject of the problems and benefits of having a personal gold standard of RPG. Background. About 1990, when computer adventure games were in their glory days, I discovered a game called Quest for Glory 2, made by Sierra, also like in Oakhurst, right next to Yosemite, which is where the Iwani is.
That makes sense.
Not counting Zelda 1 or Zelda 2 for the NES, Zelda 2 was a nightmare. Because they're not actually RPGs. Quest for Glory 2 was the first RPG game I ever played of any kind. The creators themselves, husband and wife, team Lori and Corey Cole, who met about 1979 at a tabletop RPG convention, created the game by programming an RPG skill engine over the existing Sierra adventure game engine.
Cool.
The game had a great amount of depth, and the quests required the player to explore the desert city, meet people, learn about them, and ask what they wanted, ask about lots of things, and through that, learn how to solve puzzles in the game to advance the plot and prevent a game over. The puzzles also required certain inventory items that you found or bought, and certain amount of points in one or more skills, which you could spend time practicing to increase, such as climbing, magic in general, a chosen magic spell in particular, throwing, communication, lockpicking, balance, intelligence, honor, strength, communications, etc. The puzzles often had alternate solutions as well. While one solution was best suited to your class, all solutions were possible. That's cool.
That's really cool.
Can you have these people teach designers now how to make games?
Seriously.
There is also the option to explore the desert for wandering monster encounters from which to kill and earn items or money. The game also had a time and day system where you had to eat, drink, sleep as the days passed, or suffer exhaustion and health points. After a certain number of days, certain puzzles, defeating the next elemental in order to save the city, became mandatory. The whole game held to a 30-day calendar from beginning to end.
Oh.
The game was at exactly the right balance point for simplicity and complexity, simple enough in its mechanics, but deep in its lore and possibilities to explore. It had the most advanced text parser I'd ever encountered in a game. If you or your listeners are interested in seeing what the game was like, search YouTube for Let's Play Quest for Glory 2 by YouTube user Lateblut.
Late BLT.
Late Blight.
Oh, Late Blight. There we go.
I like late BLT.
Late
like-
BLT, yeah.
Yeah.
Why
Here's
don't you spell it out just so everyone can...
LATEBLT.
Okay.
Late BLT.
Lateblut.
I think I'm just hungry. It's late BLT.
Yes.
I'm thinking late BLT.
You don't have
after
to read the
show.
direct link.
Yes.
Yeah, don't read the direct link. They can Google it.
Killjoys. 6 years later, in 19... I love that all of you guys knew I was going to do that.
Oh, yeah. We've met you.
6 years later, in 1996, I'd be introduced to Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletops RPGs, which I love tremendously. Quest for Glory 2 was magical to me, and to this day is my personal gold standard for all RPGs of any type of form. My tabletop RPG dream is to run a campaign very similar to it in form and mechanics.
Nice.
What are your personal gold standards for tabletop RPG campaigns? Have you ever had the delight in meeting them? What do you think the benefits and detriments to having a personal gold standard, something excellent to shoot for versus possibly unrealistic expectations? There's a question mark at the end of that, and
Okay.
I failed miserably.
That's fine.
Roll of 20, Bill in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Nice.
Computer games and role-playing games are very different.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the mechanics that he's talking about there would be very difficult, or at least time-consuming to do in an RPG.
But is there one where, like, if you encountered something that had that feel to it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what it sounds like. He has that feel of, like, let me get to it, where, like, suffer exhaustion and health points, and you have to eat, drink, or sleep, and you have all these things that you have to do, because if you don't, then all of these bad things happen. That is a lot of, like, stuff happening to you that isn't necessarily related to, like, other characters or role-playing with other characters, etc. It's things that happen into because of stuff you are personally doing or the environment. And all these points and stuff are things that you can keep track of. I mean, you can keep track of bullets and arrows and stuff like that. I do not have the ability to do that.
Right.
I just don't.
Well, I think the interesting piece of that is that in a lot of video games you don't you do have to worry about ammo, but it kind of does it for you.
Exactly.
Things like that. But I think there's an element of realism to having to worry about getting tired that a lot of video games specifically leave out nowadays because people don't like that. I like that, but there's a lot of the regular video game community who gets stressed out. Red Dead Redemption 2 and Red Dead Redemption, but the realism of that is something that at first everyone's like, "Wow, this is so realistic," and then people are like, "Oh,
This is so realistic.
this is so realistic." And there's,
I play a game to escape realism. Thank you.
But in the context of role playing, of tabletop role playing, I mean, if you want to do that sort of, or you have I would love it if a GM was super into tracking all of that.
Yeah.
And having that sort of
I
fear
tried.
of things, but I can't.
Yeah.
That's just something that I'm not good
I,
at.
I have some friends who GM that way, and they really love it, and their players really love it, and that's something they're into.
I tried in the last specifically D&D campaign that I ran, because that was the last campaign I ran, and I mean because D&D 5th edition has exhaustion rules. What happens when you haven't had a long rest in a certain amount of time, or haven't had a meal, or whatever, and suddenly you have you get detriments to your abilities because of it.
Yeah.
And I really tried. I did. I just keeping track of 5 players and my story and that kind of bookkeeping. When I knew my players weren't going to be doing that kind of bookkeeping, I couldn't.
Other Doc in the chat room says, years ago I started doing a homebrewed Quest for Glory conversion for Savage Worlds. Never quite finished it, but it was fun to think about. I remember corresponding briefly with Corey Cole, one of the creators of Quest for Glory, and he told me they tried using Quest for Glory World Gloriana in D&D, but it never really felt quite the same for them whenever they did it.
Yeah, I don't like my tabletop games becoming resource management bookkeeping.
Yeah, but I think that's.
Yeah.
I think the question is really
Yeah.
what's your gold standard? What do you love? So it's more what flavor ice cream do you like? So while it sounds like one of the things that they loved about Quest for Glory, and especially at the time, we have to remember when this was.
Yeah.
1990, that's
That's way out there to have that much thought and realism and that many options and things to think about in a video game. That was really
was-
different. So that
well,
was
they also
exciting.
couldn't just sit back on the graphics, so couldn't rely on the graphics
right
at the
to
time.
sell
so,
the
yeah.
game. So I don't know. What are your
For me, it's achieving a very particular kind of immersion, and this definitely comes out of the fact that I'm a LARPer as well. And it's there. I want that moment where I am not thinking about playing the character; I am reacting as the character, and it's much easier to achieve in LARP because most of the people around you have that same level buy-in, and you have more environmental factors. Whereas in a tabletop game, if you're the only one who's that heavily immersed and you've got chatter going on next to you, maybe that's not focused, or you say a comment and somebody decides they have to start playing a song on their iPod because it's not the scene they're in, but they still want to be involved somehow, or any number of other things that really can break those moments because they're very fragile moments. But when I can get those moments of immersion where I'm really just reacting as the character to the point where even if I am rolling dice, I'm not really thinking about the mechanic so much as, yes, I'm trying to swing this sword. It just feels like rolling dice. And really hitting that immersion moment, I think, is really my gold standard thing. And I'll have moments like that, but in a tabletop game, it's something that maybe lasts 10, 20 minutes, and then you move on because it's the next player's turn or something. It's a lot easier for me to get in a LARP. And I think that's a lot of the time that's what I'm looking for, is that moment where I'm not myself. But not in a mental breakdown way.
That's a good clarification.
It is, yeah. That's,
It's important. I appreciate that.
yeah, I don't know that I have one.
I don't know if I have a gold standard. I can look back, looking back at. I mean, Sierra Games did a lot of really amazing.
They
stuff
really
early
did,
on.
yeah.
But my first concept of role playing was actually hilariously enough from Zork. which is not a
Zork
role
is
playing game.
amazing.
But it's fun, right? So my brother and I, we played the fuck out of Zork 2 and 3, and we ran out of Zork to play at the time, and so we started making up our own, but we didn't want to program, so one person would be the computer, and the other person, we created dungeons that had different rooms and descriptions, but would come up with puzzles that the other person would come through and try and figure out. And so, like I said before, like, my jam is puzzles. Like, I really, not like, well, I mean, number puzzles can be fun, but like, how do I have this goal, there's this impediment to it, how do I get around it to do that? Whether it's like my character's personal thing or something that the GM is saying we have to do or whatnot. And so in Zork, that's what you're doing. And you're like, you come across these puzzles that you don't even know are puzzles, you just have an impediment until you find something else, go, oh, I can use that here, and all of that stuff. And so that's what my brother and I, when we came up with our games, would try and come up with these kind of like multi-level, multi-tiered puzzles that we would then describe to each other. We didn't have dice because we didn't know that was a way you would randomize.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really see that in Zork.
Yeah.
But like, if it comes down to like one thing that I like, or that's a standard, like I think gold standard isn't a good term for it, but like that's probably why I like a lot of that stuff, is because of that early gaming experience.
Yeah, along with, I mean, again, not true role-playing games, but more story games. There was one, oh god, this was back in the 80s on my old Macintosh. There was one called Deja Vu, Lost in Las Vegas, or the original was actually in Chicago, but and it was a story game, and you were a PI who woke up in the men's room of a bar, and you had amnesia, and you were trying to figure out who the hell you were and how you got there and what the hell happened, and oh, look, you're wanted for murder. Why? And it's just like you had to find all this stuff out, and you'd take a cab off to somewhere and get a thing, and you're like, realize, oh, that's the key that I need to use in this safe back at my office, and things like that. Yeah.
Sorry, I just got a great idea for a game from that, which is a Shadowrun campaign where all the characters wake up in the slummy, horrible part of town. They all have amnesia. They don't know what happened to them. Like, they don't know why they have cyberware or anything like that, and they have to figure shit out because they also don't have system identification numbers or fake sins. And you gotta figure out what happened.
That actually would probably work really well for a con game, because you could do that kind of an amnesia thing in a one shot fairly.
There's somebody I used to follow on LiveJournal who was playing the campaign.
Oh, God.
Was like, they had blank D&D character sheets
LiveJournal. There's a website that. No, I'm just kidding.
that we all used before Facebook.
Oh man.
No. Wasn't it LiveJournal and then MySpace and then Facebook?
I think LiveJournal and MySpace were the same time,
Oh,
but
they were.
different functionalities.
Oh.
But yeah, they were given blank D&D sheets, and whenever they woke up in a barn, and whenever they tried to do something, they were told what numbers to write in for what they were rolling.
Interesting.
So by the end of the second session, most of them thought they knew what class they were.
So for me,
that's cool.
we've got to wrap up. We're going. But I think for me, the gold standard, for me, I think was also something that started for me in video games, because there's when you're really into a video game or addicted like I was, literally,
Yes.
you get this endorphin hit when things go well, and it's for me the same in tabletop RPGs. I mean, as weird and unhealthy as that sounds, there are moments when you're playing an RPG where everything just kind of clicks and you get this endorphin hit that's similar to what I was trained as a youth to enjoy with video games. So I think that's really and you get it as a GM and you get it as a player, and it's different for everyone what it is, but there's just that moment, and that's for me the gold standard. When I get those moments, and they are fleeting, like you were talking about earlier, Mary.
I mean, honestly, I think that's just a broader description of what I was talking
Okay,
about.
yeah.
Positive psychologists have a name for that.
Oh, yeah.
They call it fiero.
Ooh.
And that's that excitement when something is very difficult or takes a high level of skill and is very difficult and it succeeds.
Yeah.
That there's that hit for you.
Cool. That's what it is. Cool. I learned a thing.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome. Well, good job, you guys. Let's see. Wait, I'm going to play the anthem.
Wait,
Should
wait.
we talk about what Kurt's doing on Sunday?
I had
yes,
little
yes.
announcement. Little announcement. You've heard me talk about my band before, and you've heard Stu and people talk about their bands. And
What is the name of your
the name of the band is Sportive Tricks, and Sportive Tricks has a show this coming Sunday, meaning 2 days from now, if you're watching live. Sunday, the 17th of November at Muldoon's Irish Pub in Newport Beach.
Yes.
And it is also, thank God, our CD release.
Yay!
We're finally releasing our fourth album,
It's very
our
exciting.
fourth full-length album.
Yes.
After you're working on it for 26 months. So, yeah, it's...
That's longer than a baby.
and it's longer than an elephant baby.
A
Let me
lot
give you an
longer,
idea.
thank God.
So, yeah, we're very, very proud of this product, and we're really excited about this, and you should... and it will be available online... If not sooner, definitely by the 20th of November.
Cool. Where online?
At sportivetricks.com, at cdbaby.com/sportivetricks, at iTunes, Amazon, yeah.
All the places.
All the places. Should be available online definitely by the 20th, maybe sooner.
Yay.
But yeah, Sportive Tricks, SportiveTricks.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
I had to
very
think
nice.
about that for a second.
Excellent.
Sportive Tricks.
Very good. Well, that's very exciting. Break a leg. That's a fantastic thing. If you're not performing, break a leg is a nice thing to say.
Yes.
So, all right. Let's close out. Thank you for joining us on Happy Jack's RPG podcast and advice show. This is season 25, episode 15. My name is Kimmy.
This is Tappy.
This is Mary.
And this is Kurt.
And thank you very much. Again, if you'd like to write into the show, happyjacksrpg@gmail.com, and we will leave you with a song. Thank you very much. Thank you to the chat room, and we will talk to you later. Goodbye.
Come listen, my friends, I've a true tale to tell of a night at the Windsors when it all went to hell. The ships had come in and the tavern ran out of lambics and lagers and bitters and stout. The patronage cried, oh now what shall we drink? So we offered them whiskey with a flirtatious swing. We offered them gin, or at least what they'd say, but they'd have none of that, for it was cider they grey. Oh, we'll never
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.